President ask you to provide more funding for U.S. troops in Japan? And what agreement did you reach here in Florida on buying more military equipment from the U.S.?
Jennifer, I can say this, that there was no collusion, and that's been so found, as you know, by the House Intelligence Committee. There's no collusion. There was no collusion with Russia other than by the Democrats, or as I call them, the obstructionists, because they truly are obstructionists. So we are giving tremendous amounts of paper. This was really a hoax created largely by the Democrats as a way of softening the blow of a loss, which is a loss that, frankly, they shouldn't have had from the standpoint that it's very easy for them. They have a tremendous advantage in the Electoral College, and this is what it is, and this is where it came from. You look at the kind of money that was paid, probably some went to Russia. You look at Podesta having a company in Russia where nothing happened and people don't talk about it. You look at the fact that their server, the DNC server, was never gotten by the FBI. Why did the FBI take it? The FBI takes what they want. They go in, they wouldn't get the server. This is a hoax. As far as the investigation, nobody has ever been more transparent than I have instructed our lawyers. Be totally transparent. I believe we've given them 1.4 million pages of documents, if you can believe this, and haven't used, that I know of, or for the most part, presidential powers or privilege. So we are hopefully coming to the end. It is a bad thing for our country, very, very bad thing for our country. But there has been no collusion. They won't find any collusion. It doesn't exist. As far as the two gentlemen you told me about, they've been saying, I'm going to get rid of them for the last 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and they're still here. So we want to get the investigation over with, done with, put it behind us, and we have to get back to business with negotiating with this gentleman and plenty of others. But this gentleman is a very tough negotiator, and we have to focus on that. Thank you very much.
Regarding the U.S. forces expenses, the U.S. forces in Japan, the safety and security of Japan, and the peace and stability of the Far East is being maintained. And for the forward deployment strategy of the United States in the Asia-Pacific, in terms of the presence in Japan is very meaningful and significant. In the case of Japan, across the world, in terms of paying for the expenses, Japan accounts for the largest percentage of stationing compared to other countries, and the President understands very well.
I'm Takita with the Sankei News. I have a question for President Trump. This is the follow-up question for 232. And so you don't have any intention to exempt Japan at this point in time, and President Trump and Prime Minister Abe, with regard to trade, you are going to establish new talks for trade. Is it going to be in the direction of FTA or TPP? So I'd like to hear the views from both of you.
So this time between President Trump, talks for free, fair, and reciprocal trade deals to initiate that has been agreed. As for this talk, Minister Motegi and Ambassador Lighthizer, USTR, will be the representative, and Mr. Aso and Vice President Pence's U.S.-Japan economic dialogue, they will be receiving the report of these talks. As for these talks, so that it will be the interest of both of the countries, the investment and trade between the two countries will be expanded, and we are going to realize the free and open Indo-Pacific economic growth. So on the U.S. side, that they are interested in a bilateral deal. We are aware of that, but at any rate, our country's position is that TPP is the best for both of the countries, and based on that position, we shall be dealing with the talks.
Thank you very much. The United States has a massive trade deficit with Japan. it's anywhere from $69 billion to $100 billion a year. That's massive by any standpoint. We are doing 232 on steel and aluminum. And if we can come to an arrangement on a new deal between the United States and Japan, that would certainly be something we would discuss, aluminum tariffs and steel tariffs. And I would look forward to being able to, at some point in the future, take them off. But right now we have a deficit that's a minimum of $69 billion a year. Japan sends us millions and millions of cars, and we tax them virtually not at all. And we don't send so much product because we have trade barriers and lots of other things. So these are the things that the Prime Minister and I are going to be discussing over the next short period of time. The media has not covered the TPP correctly. I don't want to go back into TPP, but if they offered us a deal that I can't refuse on behalf of the United States, I would do it. But I like bilateral better. I think it's better for our country. I think it's better for our workers. And I much would prefer a bilateral deal, a deal directly with Japan. We already have a deal with 6 of the 11 nations in the TPP. So we already have trade deals, and the others we can make very easily. They're all calling wanting to make a deal. But we think that's much better for us. So unless they offer us a deal that we cannot refuse, I would not go back into TPP. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we're negotiating, and what I really prefer is negotiating a one-on-one deal with Japan, and that's where we are right now. And I will say that the representatives who are sitting right here are extraordinarily competent and very tough, those representing Japan. And we will hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, have a very good deal, good for Japan and good for the United States. Okay? Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we've been listening about the Russia probe, specifically whether or not the president had decided that it was not worth the political fallout to fire the special counsel Robert Mueller, as well as the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. The president answering this way, saying, quote, "They've been saying I'm going to get rid of them for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5, and they're still here." On North Korea, interestingly, the president began his remarks, his opening statement, by saying definitively, "I'll be meeting with Kim Jong-un in the coming weeks to discuss the denuclearization of North Korea." Let's go ahead and listen to the president.
Russia will tell you there has been nobody tougher than Donald Trump. And then the other night, we had a strike in Syria, which was absolute precision. I leave it with this. With all of that said, if we can get along with China, and if we can get along with Russia, and if we can get along with Japan and other nations, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Just remember that. If we got along with other nations, that's good, not bad. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Or not, he would still sit down with Kim Jong-un if 3 Americans detained in North Korea are still going to be held by North Korea. The president said, if the meeting, when I'm there, is not fruitful, I will respectfully leave the meeting. For more, let's go to Willis Sparks, who is joining me on set. He is a CBSN contributor, and a writer for Signal at G0 Media. Willis, what stood out to you in that bilateral news conference there with the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe?
I think what was striking for me is a year after their last meeting in this country, what we see is a president who is determined to show how tough he is on behalf of the United States. He came back and he took that last question because the question was, were you tough enough on? And he probably, even before he heard the word Russia, was already spinning on his heel to come back and ask that. By contrast, the Japanese Prime Minister is in a really tough spot. He's got an approval rating back home of about 30%. He's facing scandals that imperil his future as Prime Minister. He may not make it to the fall. That remains to be seen. But what I heard substantively, most of what I heard substantively came from Abe. And some of it you have to read between the lines, but he was showing as much as he could that he and Trump are not just colleagues, that they're friends, to assure the Japanese people that he has the president's ear in the, over dinner, on the golf course, in private, in all the places that the Japanese people want to make sure the Japanese voice is heard by the president. But you can't pretend that you've got the president to turn around on TPP. You can't pretend that there's a deal on steel and aluminum tariffs. And for whatever, the president can assure the Japanese about the abduction issue, North Korea refuses to acknowledge that some of the 13 Japanese abductees are still alive, that others ever entered the country. So what the president can promise in terms of the abductee issue is very limited. But you heard the prime minister come back to that again and again. One more thing that he did. He said he used the phrase at least twice. He said, when you said, Mr. President, as part of your bold leadership, that you're going to be tough on North Korea, that you're going to do everything you can on the abductee issue, it is indelibly etched in my mind. When you met with the families of the abductees when you were in Japan, it is indelibly etched in our minds what you told us. It's their way of saying, you're a bold leader and we're so proud to be here, and Mar-a-Lago sure is beautiful. Please remember what you promised us when we're not in the room and you're alone with Kim Jong-un.
Don't forget us on
Don't
this issue.
forget us. Please remember the promises that you've made.
And at one point, there seemed to be a cautionary tone from Prime Minister Abe regarding North Korea, considering past behavior.
Really important. In the midst of saying we're hoping for an historic deal, we're behind the president's historic leadership 100%, he just sort of casually, not casually, but he threw in, well, remember that North Korea made a deal in 1994 and another one in 2006 and they cheated. It's his way of saying, no matter what Kim Jong-un promises you in the room, no matter what he told Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, over Easter weekend, they cheat. Mistrust and verify, Mr. President. Please remember who you're dealing with. That was a very subtle way for the Japanese Prime Minister to say, of course we can't always count on the North Koreans do what they say they're going to do. And of course, President Trump, in his wisdom, understands.